Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Totally Deep, and we are coming at you from the brand new Cripple Creek Backcountry store at Aspen Highlands, Colorado. I'm Chris Davenport. I'm actually the guest, and I get to be joined by the host, Doug Stenclik, the man behind this entire operation. And Doug, beautiful looking shop. It's awesome to be back in here talking to you. We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, this has been by far the busiest season we've ever had. We're trying to launch the new video series here because there's a lot of stuff to go over.
Well, first off, let's talk about why. Why has the outdoor industry gone absolutely bonkers this summer? Whether it's bikes or climbing or hiking, camping, or even RVs and boats, everybody wants to get outside in the time of crisis. What is the story with that?
Well, for one, people are cooped up.
Mm-hmm.
For two, I think when you're out in nature right now, it feels normal.
Yeah, and that's a good point.
Yeah,
and people want normalcy.
Chris and I have been talking about riding bikes a lot, and I'll get back from a mega bike ride, and I'm, COVID, politics, everything is as far from my mind as possible.
Yeah.
And then you come back and you're like, whoa, we're still doing this. So now it's winter and people are thinking the same thing for skis.
Yeah, so I am curious, and I think it's going to happen, if this energy and this momentum behind outdoor sports will carry over to the winter. Because obviously with ski resorts, there's some complexities with operations. With the backcountry, it's not quite as accessible as getting on your bike or going for a summer hike or trail run. There's risks involved, and there's access issues, and there's equipment that we need to talk about. So we're going to get into how we address that.
Yeah, and we're very special, lucky place here that access is so close for us. And right now people are able to travel, and we're hoping that keeps up. We saw the effects on trailheads throughout Colorado all summer.
Yeah,
they got really beat up.
It was incredible. I live at one of the local 14er trailheads, or just below it. And every time I was up there, I would pull in and just look around and go, oh my gosh, I cannot believe how many cars are here, how many out-of-state license plates are here. And I'm happy that everybody's out recreating, but it's kind of like a new normal, or a new world. I don't know if it's normal or not, or if it's going to stay this way. But for you as a retailer, for me as an athlete that represents a lot of brands, there's a ton of opportunity here.
Right.
So
it's at the same time a super exciting year for September. We're filming this right at the end of September.
Yeah.
It was a November for us, so we're a full 2 months ahead of schedule.
That's amazing.
But it's also a very nerve-wracking time.
Yeah.
Because the storm is coming. And it's going to be a storm of a lot of new users, which is going to be awesome, but putting a lot of stress on an infrastructure that's not really fully in place in the US yet. So I think the more we can get that message out, the better.
That's a good point. So for those of you that are paying attention to backcountry skiing in Colorado, the Colorado Avalanche Information Center, along with its partner Friends of the CAIC, recently released a campaign which was pledged to get the forecast, which I think is great. Let's all commit. Just like pledging to vote in November, pledge to be a responsible backcountry user. And so if you haven't seen that, make sure you go on to the CAIC website and check that out, because it's something that we all need to do, whether you're a highly experienced backcountry skier with decades under your belt, or you really want to get into it this year. Getting that firsthand knowledge of the forecast, what's happening in the snowpack, is critical. I mean, literally when I wake up 6 in the morning in the winter, I look at my phone, I look at the weather, I look at the forecast, and I might read some news, and I'm out of bed, putting the Gore-Tex on and heading out. And it's like that information is critical to my day.
And I actually just did a quick interview with Ethan Green.
Cool. So tell me what he had to say.
Well, I push the same thing. Everybody has a procrastination routine before you really launch into work. You can't get to work right at 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
So just make the CAIC, or if you're listening to the Pacific Northwest or Utah, tune into your local, Avalanche forecast, even if you're not going to ski that day.
Yeah.
And just keep an eye on what's going on.
Well, you make a good point. Even if you're not skiing that day, understanding the trend in the forecast, and just by reading it every day, kind of keeps you abreast of what's happening out there, because not many of us are fortunate enough to be out in the backcountry every single day. And I will say, if you are using the forecast, if you're a backcountry skier, make a donation, like support these Avalanche centers, because most of them are funded by people like us that are consumers, that are, you know, users that are out there. So it's important.
It's a tough year because we usually do a lot of fundraising.
Right.
We as a business rely on this service and a lot of skiers for the recreation.
Well, actually, just the other day when I first came into the shop here to see this new space, I was like, oh, this is a perfect spot to do a slideshow, a fundraiser, a party, bring everybody together. But of course, we can't do that.
Yeah, so we got to do it a little bit remotely.
Yeah.
Hence, we're here, and I think that's a perfect first place to start. Support your local Avalanche organization. It's going to be crucial this year for helping spread the word and keep people safe.
Yeah. So as far as that goes, how do you, as a business, focus on your operations, your retail, what makes you money, but also focus on sort of the responsible operations? Like, you know, companies that stand for things typically are the ones that succeed. So like, what does Cripple Creek Backcountry stand for? And I know it's Avalanche education and responsible usage, but you know, you might look at a company like Patagonia and it's sustainability and climate change, or Burton Snowboards, or Cliff Bar. How would you describe like the ethos behind Cripple Creek?
Yeah, ours is entirely based on safety and education within our one little niche, and everything we do with the staff, it's always, you know, that's our rubric that we check it on. If we have a new product, if we have a new service that we're offering, you know, if you can kind of see, we're sitting at a bar, which is part of, you know, it's part of backcountry skiing.
Yeah. And so, by the way, I have to ask, where did these taps come from?
They came from right here. Did you recognize them?
I did recognize them, but I couldn't remember. They were next door?
Yeah. So
they weren't down from Carbondale?
They were.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we got it from, you know, the old pizza company before it was the Ale House.
Went to that's where I recognized it from.
Back to where it came from. But so, you know, this was a fun part because, like, you know, Dab just said, we have slideshows and we get the community together, and that was an important part. We toyed around with the idea of, you know, do we open a bar, you know, next to a ski shop?
Right.
That's not part of keeping people safe. It might be...
No, but it is part of community building.
Right, and we always felt like just the small tap presence was the community building.
Yeah.
So, but we're always kind of evaluating that. And it's difficult because I really think backcountry skiing, which, you know, we've tried to separate a little bit from what we do. You know, we do ski touring of every level.
Yes.
And we'll get into that in a minute, but backcountry skiing, it's one of the more dangerous becoming mainstream sports you can do.
Yeah, it's right on that edge. You can do it certainly in a safe way, but it's also very, very easy to step over that line.
Yeah.
You know, while you're out there.
Yeah.
You might have a plan that's totally reasonable and based on information that you've read or talked to people, and then you get out there and you see something else, and human nature is human nature, and things change. And we see this time and time again where people get lured into something that wasn't in their original plan.
Yeah.
And that's just something that we need to continue to kind of push. That's like, you know, always have sort of a plan B, a way out. Never feel like you're going to get sucked into something that's super dangerous. I really hope. I mean, historically, Colorado would have 6 or 7 avalanche fatalities a year. That's just the statistic. We certainly don't know what Mother Nature is going to do this winter. Snow plays a huge role in that, but we do know that there's going to be more users than ever. So when that number goes up, the chances of having more accidents goes up. And I just personally want to play a part in keeping that number low.
Yeah, it's September still. We got a lot of time ahead for the season.
We have a lot of time, but I've been up in the mountains a bunch this last week, and I can smell winter. It is right around the corner, and I don't know when the fire hose will turn on and the snow will fall, but as soon as it comes, I mean, we had a snowstorm over Labor Day weekend, and people were skiing on the pass.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Like
deep snow.
People are chomping at the bit to get out there.
And what I would say, if you're recruiting some of your friends to get into the sport, you know, tell them about the gear, tell them about how much fun they're going to have, but everybody can help push that safety message right from the get-go.
And another thing is, I think a lot of guide services and ski resorts are going to be offering intro to backcountry or ski touring clinics. So if you want to get out, you want to get on some ski touring gear, and you want to learn how to use your skins, learn how to use the bindings, learn how to move up and down the mountain safely, come over here to Cripple Creek or Aspen Expeditions, talk to me, talk to talk to Doug, talk to Dirk, and we're going to be doing clinics. We're going to be taking people out at the beginning of the season and building that sort of safety mindset, that responsible user mindset from the beginning. So join us because it's going to be fun. We're going to be doing it.
Airy courses don't have to be the entire goal.
Yeah.
You know, that we can, I think a lot of people have come to equate that with being safe. So let's give them some other options.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we're here to talk about safety some more and really about lowering the bar you have to get over to get into the sport of backcountry skiing and ski touring.
Yeah, it wasn't too long ago that to be a backcountry skier meant basically only going in the backcountry. And in the last decade or so, we've seen this incredible surge in uphilling on ski resorts. And it is a wonderful way to learn how to use your gear, all the equipment, to meet people, find partners, learn how to talk about sort of being up in the mountains as you're uphilling. And in a way, it kind of lowers the bar or the barrier of entry. You don't have to be an airy level 2 Avalanche educated person to go out and have fun in the backcountry. I think what you and I both want to do, and the industry-wide wants to do, is like lower the bar and make it easier for people to get out.
Yeah, and you know, Chris Davenport here was a good first example for me that I used to watch you in movies all the time, you know, and we talk about trips to Alaska and all over. Yeah. And then I would run into you on top of Highlands Bowl all the time, you know? Yeah. And people don't talk about that a lot, that those big trips take months and months to set up. You know, there's plenty of fun out here. And I think one of the things we're trying to push lately is there's no life or death decision needing to be made in this sport at all.
No, absolutely not.
And one of the things is an avalanche course teaches you kind of how to walk that line. There's thousands of runs in Colorado alone of super safe, non-avalanche terrain. Yeah. And so a good first place to lowering that bar is flipping that switch that you don't have to step over that line ever to fully enjoy a long lifetime of ski touring.
Let me ask you this, Doug, and I'll share my answer with you, but when you go into the backcountry or you go into the mountains in general, why do you do it? Like, what are you looking for?
So, you know, to go back to our first segment, it's really escaping a little bit, you know, from my mind, my own thoughts and the world externally, and feeling that, you know, especially ski touring, the breaths of cold air and, you know, that connection to the mountains. Yeah, I love it. So for me, for many years, especially in my 20s and 30s, when we were making those ski movies that you watched, and that was an incredible time, it was to go out there and shred rad lines and just, I don't know, do cool stuff in the mountains, but that came at a very, very high price of risk. And I made it through the gauntlet of my 20s and 30s. Somehow I'm still sitting here, and the older I get, the more I think back on that, and I'm super lucky, because my introduction to the sport was right to Alaska, right to the Himalaya, like right into the big time, without years and years and years of backcountry skiing here. I mean, I did some, but not a ton. But now, and I hope everybody can kind of take this as a lesson, the reason I love getting out there, and you just said it, is connection to nature. I just love being outside. I like the exercise, I like the fresh air, I like the views. I don't need to go ski something gnarly to have this like visceral reaction that makes me feel good. It, like you said, it puts all of the kind of bullshit that's happening in the world around us off to the side for a moment. And so I think that if people have that mindset of just enjoying the moment, much like you would on a bike ride, then you're more apt to make good decisions and stay safe, rather than step on the gas pedal and sort of look for trouble out there. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a perfect first place to start. Just don't make the decision. You know, just keep it simple, keep it safe. You know, the airy courses, I don't mean to knock them at all. It's an incredible resource where for 3 days you can be with an avalanche expert. You know, we offer those courses through Aspen Expeditions right here. But one of the things we're really working on this year are those clinics, which lower the time commitment and lower the price. And you can kind of go through a lot of the decision making and a lot of the terrain selection without having to sign up or shell out the money for 300 for the 3-day, hundreds of dollars course.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you are getting really into the backcountry and you're interested in snow, the American Institute of Avalanche Research and Education, ARI, of which I was a board member for many, many years, is a fantastic place to start. The education is amazing. You're going to learn a ton. But in the end, you're going to realize that the more you know, the more you actually realize that you don't know. It's kind of strange. Like, you know, I'm interested, I'm not a scientist, but I'm interested in physics and like astronomy and like what's happening in the universe. And the more I read about it, the more I'm just like, I can't even like, you know, process it all.
Yeah, and this is on like the micro scale of
totally.
that. And it's still just
yeah, this is on a micro scale with snow and backcountry. The more I dig into it, the more I'm like, step back. I'm just gonna rely on my like basic risk management and decision making, and not worry about the science of the snow as much. I'll leave that to the professionals, and we all can do that.
So one of the things I was going to ask you about is you're obviously grounded a little bit more than usual this season, right?
Yeah. So I haven't been on an airplane in 6 months. This is the longest I have been home in 25 years, and the longest I haven't flown in 25 years. And it's been incredible. I've found hundreds of new adventures in my own backyard, whether it's on the bike or the trails or the mountains, and I'm really enjoying it. And so I'm shifting the way I think about my winter, which is typically just like full of international travel with guiding and filming and things like that, to what can we accomplish here in our amazing mountain range locally that we haven't done yet. And there's like, the list just goes on and on and on. There's so much we can do here.
Right. So, you know, these other places were where we could push it before, because that's where it was being pushed.
Yeah.
And now you realize, living here for 25 years, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
I bring it up because we're trying to do more on the local level.
Yeah.
With the guiding, with the education. So not only are there the 1-day intro to skinning courses that, you know, we'll be teaching, but another new product we're trying to put forth is, you know, as you've traveled around, guiding has always been a big part of cultures in Europe and, you know, and South America even. Yeah. And here, a lot of people DIY it.
Yeah, they do.
And we're trying to lower that barrier to entry too. So one of the things I've talked about with Aaron Carlson from the Friends of CAIC is this idea that you can go out with a guide and they can shadow your decision-making process.
Yes.
And that could be even more valuable than signing up for a multi-day course.
Yeah, that's so great. And I actually have done that myself.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate to do a bunch of heli skiing at CMH in Canada. And they've got some of the most incredible guides, Swiss, Austrian, mostly European, some Canadians. But this one Swiss guide in particular that I've skied with a ton, who I have just a huge amount of respect for. He's like super guide. A number of times I've said, "Hey, Danny, like, you know, can I let me just guide this run and talk to the group," and he'd be like, "Okay," and kind of do an assessment. And it's so great to flip the role, whether it's you know, doing avalanche safety beacon checks in the morning or something out in the field. It just kind of makes you think about every little process, and some of these things that we do become like automatic. And it's good to sort of have somebody look at it and be like, yeah, that's really good, but actually, why don't you try this? Or you know, just mix it up. So like, assessing each other. You know, if you and I went out, I'm sure there's some things that you do that I'd be like, oh, actually, that's pretty cool. And there's some things that I do that you'd be like, that's so whack. Why is he doing that? Well, because I'm older.
And it's all over the place. And if you get away from that, you know, you might have been mentored in backcountry years and years and years ago, and you start losing some of that assessment. And I think that's the thing is, you know, guiding as it exists worldwide and in our country, like these people are out all the time. My friends in this valley that guide, I couldn't even imagine putting ski boots on as many days as they do in a season. And you know, that's experience that you can tap into, and it's not just, it doesn't have to be, there's the powder, ski there. You know, and that's one of the things we're working on, is building a little bit more of a value added for, you know, shelling out the money and making the day really worthwhile.
Yeah, well, it's super exciting that you guys are doing that, and I hope that Mother Nature plays along, because God, it would be really great if we had a big winter, a deep snowpack, and a stable snowpack.
Yeah.
You know, if we have kind of a slow start and things are shallow and everybody's wanting to get out there, could be tricky. So fingers crossed that Mother Nature plays along with us this winter.
Yeah, exactly. We'd love to offer those courses, the guided days, early on. Even in November, and
Absolutely.
get people off on the right foot.
I mean, I told Dirk the other day, like, as soon as there's snow on the ground, man, I'm in here. Call me up. I'll take people out and let's start training.
Yeah.
I'm a gear nerd. You're a gear nerd. We
Yeah.
love having great gear. And for me personally, I don't know if this is true for you. Sometimes I feel like I've got the perfect setup, just dialed. And then there's some seasons where I'm like, I'm trying this, I'm trying that. Just nothing feels exactly right.
I thought that was just me.
Okay.
I'm like a little relieved to hear that.
Yeah. But my point is, this past spring, I got it so dialed that I'm feeling really good about it. So I want to share some of the gear that I'm using with you guys. And so I've been with Kesley skis for, since 2007. That's 13, 14 years.
Yeah.
And I've got two setups that are sort of my main go-to setups. So the first is the Kesley TX93. Put that up here on the table. So 93 millimeters in the waist. This is paired with an ATK binding, which is an Italian binding company.
I love those bindings.
That we partner with Kesley. And the 93 is kind of there might be soft snow, but it's not very deep, or it's crud, or spring corn.
Yeah.
It just rips. And I can even uphill on the ski resort on the ski, although I might go with an even skinnier one. I'm typically going to use this ski with the Scarpa F1 boot. This is by far my favorite boot, and when I say that, I don't say it lightly, because I was involved in the design development of the Freedom Collection with Scarpa, which was sort of our high performance, more alpine boots over the last 10 years. No longer available, but if you can get your hands on a pair, the Freedoms are awesome. But the Scarpa F1, you guys are going to do great with this boot in the shop. The fit is amazing, and even though it's really light, it can drive this ski once you get used to it with such great performance. So,
I'll tell you a little story
let's
about
hear
this.
Tell me.
This is also one of my favorite boots, and I think 2 years ago, I thought I'd really outsmart myself, and I was like, I love this boot, but what if I had more boots? And that's when I went with the Hoji was new that year from Deep Fit, and I was like,
was that with the speed toe or?
Yeah, and I'll get a bigger boot,
okay,
with his cool patent Hoji lock system, and then I'll get the Alien RS. And my idea was I'll have the Alien RS, which is another Scarpa amazing boot for my really fast and light. I'm sure you ski that boot a bunch.
Yeah.
And then I'll have the Hoji for my bigger days.
Yeah.
And what I realized is I never really cared about going as fast as I could with the Alien RS.
Yeah.
And then it never skied as well. And when I put the Hoji on, I was like, man, I don't want to drag this thing uphill.
Right.
And I think that really speaks. I sold this boot to make room for more boots, and all I ever wanted was to get back in the F1. I'm excited this year because they updated it.
Yeah.
With some tweaks that, I think they really needed to do. Reinforcing this tongue.
Yep, absolutely. That gives you a lot more power when
Yeah.
you're forward in the front of the boot, and then the walk mode as well.
Yeah.
So I've done the same thing. I've kind of narrowed my focus. I mean, as a professional in the ski industry and somebody that's involved with these companies, I've had the opportunity to have a quiver, to have a number of boots. But I found the last couple seasons, the F1 was my go-to by far.
Yeah.
Now, with that said, on big powder days, or if I'm maybe at a ski touring lodge in Canada or something, and I know I'm really going to be sort of pushing, I'm going to go up in width with the TX 103 from Kesley. So 103 millimeters in the waist, same ATK binding, still super light wood core, great performance, and I can totally drive this ski with the F1, but if it's deep pow, I tend to be skiing a little faster, pushing a little harder, so I'm going to pair it with the Mistrale XT, which especially with this custom Intuition liner is just an absolute awesome match for this ski. And I know you guys are selling this one as well. For the backcountry skier that wants to charge, maybe likes catching a little bit of air, maybe skis the ski area a number of days as well, or as a ski patrol or somebody like that, this is the boot, because you can spend 10 hours a day in it. It's super comfortable. It's really warm. You could take this boot to Alaska, for instance, and be totally psyched. So this combination for me is kind of like, when it's deep out there and I want to ski fast, I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, and you used to be all over the FX series by Kesley all the time. I'm sure you still ski it.
Yeah, the FX, which were my signature like pro model skis for gosh, 6, 7, 8 years, are still great, but I find myself only using them on the resort pretty much. Even though I've got Marker V-Works bindings on them, touring binding, Kingpin, thank you. I just don't find myself touring with them very much, and if I do, it's kind of like maybe off the side of the ski area. The technology for backcountry skis with weight and performance has gotten so good, and not just with Kesley. There's lots of other brands that are fantastic, but I'm really enjoying just how like easy and comfortable these skis are. And
alluding back to those days in the bowl years ago, when I first skied with you, you were in big heavy skis and boots, and just watching how hard you can end up pushing a ski this light, it really does show how far it's come.
It's so funny.
You could have never got on a ski, this weight.
No.
8 years ago.
Absolutely not.
Folded in half.
No, I mean, and the way we thought about skis is like, okay, if I'm going to ski hard, then I have to have an alpine ski and maybe an alpine boot that can tour a little bit. But that's all changed. And listen, it was only 13 years ago that I finished skiing the 14ers in Colorado with none of this stuff.
Right.
Literally with like alpine gear, Freechy bindings, and a Solomon boot that was a rental boot with a walk mode.
Yeah.
So we have come so far. It's been so cool to watch. And what we see in your shop right here is like the culmination of a decade of hard work by all these companies to bring out amazing products. And I think we're in like, I don't know, just a really cool era of backcountry skiing when it comes to equipment.
Yeah.
But we need to talk about safety too.
Yeah, this is the most important part. We always get a little overly excited. The Kesley TX line is brand new, fully redone this year. They went to a little bit more of a capped sidewall construction, which I think is going to give it, a little extra durability, and ready to go. But so we get excited because, we're gear nerds, so we start nerding out about this stuff. But let's talk about safety gear.
Yeah, so safety starts first right here in your mind, right? By having a plan, checking the forecast, having good partners, knowing your route, and also always having a plan B and plan C, and never feeling like you're sort of stuck in one with one decision. I'm constantly like adapting my decision making out in the mountains. I never, based on what I see with weather and stuff, but we carry physical items with us that are going to help us in case of an accident. But I think a lot of people, and you and I were talking about this behind the scenes, a lot of people rely on those to help them make a decision. Like, I'm going to ski this. I have a shovel, I have a beacon, I have a probe, I've got a partner, I've got an airbag, I'll be fine. And I did a personal exercise last spring in the backcountry behind Snowmass, where I went out one day by myself with no backpack, no beacon, nothing, and skinned around. And I can't even tell you how different the sensation was mentally and even physically. I felt like I was walking on pins and needles. I was totally unwilling to ski most slopes. And I ran into 2 Snowmass patrollers out there that they were on their day off, and they were backcountry skiing. And we kind of talked about that, and they were like, "Whoa, okay, cool, be careful." And I'm like, "Yeah, you guys too."
Right.
Who's more apt to make a mistake? The people that have all the gear, or the people that have no gear? So I'm absolutely not advocating for you to go in the backcountry with no gear. But as an exercise, it reminded me that the gear doesn't actually matter. What matters is, first and foremost, in your mind, with your partner, open communications and discussions about like, what are the expectations? What are you guys trying to do that day? Before we get into the gear, like, what's your mindset when you go out on a day of backcountry skiing? Are you thinking about the destination and the goal of the slope? Are you thinking about, let's just go out and have a fun day? Are you like, how do you start kind of your day, like your mindset of a day of skiing?
So again, we're lucky here that the access is so good, and there's pretty complicated terrain.
Yeah, there is,
in the
for
Alp
sure.
Mountains here,
And snowpack.
and snowpack, and there are these like ribbons of safety, you know, that sometimes you're like, I can't believe I'm skiing the same run 50, 60, 70 times, you know, in a season, much less in my career skiing here. But I like to, for the most part in the winter, I like to pick those safer shots, you know, keep it low angle and just get out there to have fun. In the spring, you know, things start getting dialed up a little bit, but I think that's a really good place to start is, as I've started to ski more of the 14ers, on some of the days where I was pushing steeper lines, I'm not even sure I had as much fun on those days ticking off a major line than I did.
It'd be stressful.
On those days with friends skiing low angle pow. So a lot of times we like to talk about, I think a great thing to do is to give like red, yellow, and green assessments.
Yes.
And I learned that trick a few years ago. I like closing terrain. Yeah. Just like, you know, the ski patrollers you met on their day off.
Or commercial operations.
Yeah,
it's super important to do that, and it's typical of a morning guide meeting to discuss snowpack and terrain and weather and say, we're not going here on these aspects or these angles or these slopes. These ones we might be able to assess during the day in the field, and these ones are open based on what we know.
Because on a bluebird day, when that snow is just perfectly sparkly and untouched, it really looks welcoming. Yeah. And there's days I've been up there and I've looked down and I've been like, man, I can't believe I'm about to ski this again when that looks so good. But we closed that before we even got up in the morning. Yeah. And so it's got to stay closed until you know, we're ready to assess and open it again.
I like to think of the backcountry as kind of like the host of a party, and that party can be pretty incredible, or it can be the worst experience of your life. But when you get an invite in your inbox saying it's game on, that's meaning that the conditions are great and the backcountry is ready to go. You know, that's the time to kind of maybe push a little bit further based on what you know. So like a great place to start, and you can get it here at Cripple Creek or online or wherever. I've been with Black Diamond for many, many years, and they have this amazing avalanche safety kit, which is a shovel, a probe, and a beacon all in one package for a nice low price. So this you're gonna buy and put into your backpack, which I've been using the last couple of years, the Black Diamond Jet Force, which you guys are carrying here, and this comes in a few different sizes, and also has, what's the Peeps technology in here? It's got a transceiver or a transponder.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like the little ones that the dogs carry?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's so cool. So Avalanche airbag. These are all like what I would call reactionary technologies, meaning you use them when something bad has happened. So you hope to never have to use it. But you know, we all make mistakes, and even the most seasoned avalanche professionals and guides that have been out there a ton, just by virtue of time in the no-fall zone, if you will, exposure, get caught. So we have to have these things with us. And it's fun. You know, like one of the things, and this goes back to when I was a little kid in New Hampshire, I loved going into the gear store and talking gear. I loved, you know, I remember being like 8 years old and going to Eastern Mountain Sports and climbing into the tents on the floor and feeling the sleeping bags, and come into your local retailer and check all this stuff out, because the technology is just like better every single year. Yeah. And you know, you and your staff talk with consumers every single day about this stuff, right? Like what they should buy, what they should use, how to use it.
You know, Black Diamond's had an awesome partnership with Peeps. Yeah. You know, they're importing these now, and you know, the displays have gotten bigger. They've gotten more intuitive. Yeah. You know, they have 3 antennas now. That's like standard. A lot of people are still holding on to their older beacons, and I'm not saying this as a retailer. I'm just saying this as a skier. It's time to like upgrade your beacon. Yeah. It makes a huge difference.
I mean, you don't have a 10-year-old cell phone, do you?
No.
So you shouldn't have a 10-year-old beacon.
And they actually have little crystals in there that, you know, transmit at the correct frequency. And the more you drop it and the more you mess with it, the more they'll shift off. And it can be a big deal.
It's funny that you say that, because I still actually have a beacon that had been kind of abused just from usage, and it doesn't work as well as it used to. Like, it's definitely off, so I put that one away. But let me ask you one more question. have you practiced yet this fall with your beacon?
I have not.
No, I haven't either.
No.
And I always, this is what I do. So instead of just going out to the yard or whatever, laying a second beacon down and practicing finding it, I take like one of my kids or my wife and I give her or them an Avalanche beacon clinic. Like I'm teaching a novice.
Yeah.
Because it kind of reminds me about all of the things that I need to be thinking about with search.
So I'm lucky because I do get to showcase the functionality sometimes many times a week.
Yeah.
But one thing I would warn you about is in a shop like this, with our cell phones in our pocket, with the camera going,
Yeah.
you cannot even remotely use it.
Right. Too much interference.
Yeah. Chris is lucky; he lives way out in an old snowmass, and even in his yard, you're escaping from a lot of those towers shooting down on you. So get out there, and this is a good time to practice. It's real cold to practice in the snow, and you don't need to bury it, 5 feet down to get the full effect.
No, you don't. Let me ask you another question. When you go out for a day of backcountry skiing, when do you turn your beacon on in the morning?
So I turn it on usually right when we're getting out of the car. We always do a beacon check within those first 20 feet. A lot of times in trailheads around here, I'm turning it on when I leave the house. Yeah. There's avalanche risk on roads, and I think about it all the time when I'm driving some roads in Colorado.
My mantra is put it on, turn it on.
Okay.
As soon as that beacon touches my body, whether it's in a pocket or on the harness, it's on. If it's at the house, it's off. As soon as I'm carrying it, it's just on. That's a rule. That way I never forget.
Yeah.
Because I've definitely stepped out of the car and been on the trailhead. If it was like, oh, we've got like a long 6 mile flat approach, we'll deal with it. Like, don't do that.
Right.
Because like you said, avalanches can happen anywhere.
It's not worth the price of AAA batteries.
So put it on, turn it on. That's a good one.
Yeah. With the airbag pack here, this is the Jet Force Pro. They have a Jet Force Tour, which is one of my favorites.
That's actually what I'm using.
Yeah,
a little bit lighter, a little bit smaller. Definitely not going to carry as much gear, but it's fantastic.
And I'll give just a quick pros and cons of canisters versus fan packs, electric fan packs. And canisters were the first ones out there.
Talking about compressed air canisters.
Right. Yeah. They've kept the price really low. You can usually buy the pack, the canister separate. You can find those on sale. If you need a pack, the canister pack's a great way to go. We've shifted most people to electric fan packs. They aren't a rechargeable battery. They're way easier to travel with. And one of the things I like about this a lot is we will practice this many times a year, which I would never dream to do with a canister, because there's such, I have a compressor downstairs and it's still a pain and a little scary to fill it every time.
I think that's one of the most important benefits of the fan is that you can pull it and put it away and pull it and pack it. And
many times in one day.
Oh, my kids love doing that. When I first got one, this was probably, I don't know, when did the Jet Force come out? Maybe like 6 years ago?
Yeah.
It was kind of the big red backpack. Right. It was like, I think Christmas week, they must have pulled that thing 20 times. It was hilarious.
Yeah, and we'll do it, we don't like to do it in actual avalanche terrain because that's a little horrifying.
Yeah.
But what we will do is when we've established we're in the run out, and we've made it to relative safety, we'll say, okay, practice is on, be ready to grab your trigger. And we'll yell for it, and you go and you pull it and you just inflate it. You look like a little bit of a clown, but you get to practice putting it back in. And one of the things with all of this gear, it only works as well as you know it and how much you practice with it.
Yeah, that's true for these digital and technologies like the fan, but it's also true for the shovel and the probe.
Yeah.
Like I practice shoveling. The methodology behind shoveling, the way you do it with partners, is really important.
And pacing yourself.
Well, I was just going to say, you've never been so exhausted as trying to shovel through avalanche debris. It is absolutely so fatiguing. So another good thing to practice. Yeah. Get out there and shovel. Find a bunch of like gravel and rocks and just get in there.
Your shovel can take it.
So what are we missing as far as gear? One thing that we didn't talk about, and I didn't bring anything that I use, but what about communications? What are you using in the backcountry? Because I think communications is like one of those things that's going to hopefully prevent an accident from happening.
Yeah, it's funny that it took BCA Backcountry Access coming out with the Link walkie-talkie for me to realize that my whole life, all I ever wanted was a walkie-talkie since I was like 6 years old.
Right.
And now I'm in a store full of them. But it doesn't have to be a backcountry store.
What was the Jack Black movie where he's like, like he's like up on that ladder and gosh, it's gonna come to me. I can't remember, but he's like pretending he's on a fake walkie.
Yeah,
it's fun.
Yeah, it is, and you feel dialed and you feel in communication, and it doesn't have to be a backcountry company specifically making.
Of course,
like they're great and they think about a lot of functionality, a lot of like being able to operate it with your gloves on.
Yeah.
But you can go. I would say Radio Shack, but that's outdated now. But you can go.
I think it's still online. I don't know.
Yeah, you can order a Motorola
Yeah.
walkie-talkie set and practice with that just like you would the other gear. I can't believe how much my nerves have gone down. I've been in ski terrain where we're waiting to see a friend come out of a shot and they don't come out, and then we're like, do we go? Ghost Rider, are you okay? And he's like, yeah, I just kicked a shoe. I'll be on my way in 30 seconds. And they're getting their ski back on. And instead, you could put yourself in a really bad situation loading a slope when there's no need to.
Yeah.
And a simple sign on from the walkie-talkie gets that message across.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of that. And especially if you've got, if you're guiding and you have clients or you're out there with like a bigger group, just kind of like herding cats and keeping everybody on the same page with simple communication, it goes a long way. So I definitely would invest in a radio or two, because you're not going to talk to yourself.
Yeah, my rule is I'll never ever go skiing with more than 2 other people, so 3 people total.
Okay.
Unless we have walkie-talkies.
Oh, that's a good point.
And then we kind of operate almost more like 2 groups.
Yeah.
Where if one group's moving a little faster, there could be 2 people moving a little faster. We'll let them get ahead, stay in touch on the walkie-talkie. After they ski, they'll spot from somewhere on the skin track, well out of safety.
Yeah.
And then you can still meet up for lunch and hang out and switch in and out, but I think it's essential for those bigger groups.
Yeah, I agree. And to do that just at the top of a run, it's really important to talk about how you're going to descend so that you don't have to use the radio, but like this person's going to ski first, and then you're going to pull out on this island of safety, skiers left, and then the second person's going to like, kind of getting the plan together.
Yeah.
And then when you execute it, it's like, okay, that was pretty easy. But if you and I've done this, I've been guilty of this myself. You get up there and it may or may not have happened even this spring locally, where you get up there and you're just fired up and you're like, all right, see ya. And then it's like all of a sudden, we didn't really have a plan, we just skiing. And so I like to take a step back and be aware of the familiarity complex or bias. And talk about how you're going to execute this particular run.
Yeah, and it all comes back down to something we've mentioned again and again, but maybe not by name, is the group dynamics.
Yeah.
And it's being dialed with your partners.
Right.
And not shying away from systems.
Well, what's the expectation?
Right.
Like when you go out, when you leave the car, when you leave the ski area, whatever it might be, like not just kind of going and waiting to see what happens.
Yeah.
Like knowing what you're getting into from the get-go. It's so important.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this has been a great discussion about the technology. I love geeking out on all of this stuff, and just coming into the new shop here and seeing kind of like what you guys have is really cool. I hope that you can kind of hang on to some of this stuff and it doesn't all sell out by like October, but it might.
No,
I have a final question with you about gear before we go. What are your concerns going into this season? It seems like there's going to be a lot of people wanting to buy backcountry gear, wanting to get out in the backcountry, wanting to learn. So as a retailer, how do you address that? I mean, are you going to run out of equipment?
Yeah, in all honesty, we're definitely going to run out of equipment. We saw with bike
Good
shops.
problem to have.
Yeah, it's a good problem, and our bottleneck is the sheer amount of stress that we're able to take, and the stress comes with juggling the inventory and the staff,
right.
But also the stress of like sending customers and friends out into harm's way. So we're just going to keep staying on that safety message as it goes with that. And I think really, one last public service announcement I would like to put out is you're going to need to have a little bit more patience and understanding for a lot of people this year. And when I go back to who mentored me, there were very welcoming people. Yourself, Lou Dawson, the first guy to ski with 14ers was somebody I spent a ton of time with.
Yeah.
And he was so welcoming and had no business being welcoming to me. I opened a ski touring shop next to it, The Guru on ski touring
Yeah.
gear. And he was incredibly welcoming,
Yeah.
always had time to talk. And I had other friends that were not welcoming. And when they asked you to go out, you're like, oh man, I can't believe this dude wants to ski with me. He hates everybody. And you feel yourself getting pulled both ways, where you can get pulled towards like the old crusty that's pissed about their like local area getting overrun, or that really welcoming and helpful mentor.
Yeah.
And we're all going to be faced with that choice this year. If you're a returning backcountry skier, if you're not brand new, you're going to get to be one of those two mentors.
Yeah.
And I would just encourage people, like, it'll be safer, it'll be better for everyone if we can be welcoming.
I think that's a great advice and a great way to end this podcast.
Yeah.
I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Cripple Creek Backcountry, again, we're in their new shop at Aspen Highlands, and it's amazing. And Doug, cheers to a safe season.
Yeah.
Right. Let's keep the tips up.
Yeah.
Keep it upright and ski a lot of POW and sell a lot of gear and have a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thanks for coming down.
Yeah. Thanks.